Welcome to the Authentic Self Revolution. I'm Carly, your guide on this journey to genuine living and the real wealth of freedom and fulfillment. In a world that just loves to tell us who we should be, we're here to remember who we truly are. We're here for the questioners, the misfits, and anyone who's ever felt there must be more to life than following the script. Together, we'll explore what it means to revolutionize your life by living it on your terms. Each week, we peel back the layers of shoulds and musts and dive into practical ways to live more authentically. If you're listening only and want to see my face, you can head over to my YouTube channel, Owning Authenticity, where you'll find this podcast, along with a treasure trove of other content aimed at uncovering who you truly are. Your authentic self is waiting, so let's dive in. So in today's episode, I am super excited to introduce you to the 4 dimensions of authenticity. And before you're like, wait, I've never heard of that. That's because I made it up. I came out of a nap yesterday and was like, whoa, this is a whole thing. Let's talk about it. So as we get into today's episode, we are going to look at the 4 dimensions of authenticity. They are the core, the relational, the evolving, and the manifested. Okay, and we'll explain what all of that means. And the goal of this is that when we think about authenticity, like in the culture, when it's talked about, what I see and hear and also experience myself is that often it can be we're like kind of skipping over 3 of the dimensions and we're focusing on manifested authenticity, which in this model that we are going to talk about, I've defined as having your life match your true self. Okay, so like when we think about authentic living and the authenticity journey, like that's really what we're talking about, is lining your life up with who you really are. That is part of it. Absolutely. And if anything, that is kind of the outcome of the other 3 dimensions of authenticity. And I use the word dimensions on purpose because really, as we look at any situation in our life, wanted, unwanted, happy, not so happy, we will be able to, just like in the 3D reality, like the 3rd dimension is only 1 dimension and the 4th dimension isn't somewhere else. It's an existing layer on this reality. So as we look at any moment in your life, any experience that you're currently living, we'll be able to see the manifested authenticity. We'll also be able to see the evolving authenticity, the relational authenticity, and the core authenticity. And so this conversation will hopefully help you to put some things into perspective. It should at least give you some additional language. I know it's been super eye-opening for me to be able to look at the journey through this lens of how the different dimensions of authenticity play together, how they get in each other's way, what it looks like when one of them is really overdeveloped and out of balance with the other ones. Super fascinating stuff. So if you're an authenticity nerd like me, I think you're really going to love this conversation. Go ahead and take a second to like the video, leave a review on the podcast. All of that stuff means the world to me, and I so appreciate your support. So as we think about these 4 dimensions, let me give you kind of the quick overview of each of the 4 dimensions, and then we'll do a deeper dive into each of them. I feel like with each of these, we could do an entire episode, and maybe someday we will, on the various dimensions. But for today, we're going to kind of start with the basic and then get just a little bit more detailed than that. The first dimension, and these are kind of in order, kind of not in order because it's not super linear, like first you do this one and then you do this one and then you do this one. They're kind of all happening at the same time. They all expand simultaneously, which is why when you do get one really overemphasized and out of balance with the other ones, it can cause some of the issues like what we're going to talk about a little later in the episode. But the first dimension is core authenticity. Okay. And it's called the core because it is like the middle of the battery. It's the juice that makes everything else work. And that's why you'll see as we go into each of these, you can't skip these and just jump straight to manifested authenticity. It doesn't work like that. So core authenticity is the foundation of your authentic self. It's rooted in your values, your beliefs, and your vision. So basically that's to say, knowing who you truly are, being really clear and articulate about your values, your beliefs, your vision of the life of your life and of the world. So having all of that be really conscious for you. That doesn't just happen. This is something we cultivate. This is something we build. And we're also going to talk about how to develop each of these dimensions of authenticity. If it's something that as we talk about it, you identify, you're like, wow, yeah, no, I could use some more of that dimension. Great. That's the whole point of this podcast. So we'll have some strategies, some practical tips. You know, I love those. To develop each dimension. So that's number one, core authenticity. Number two, relational authenticity. This is how you express yourself, your true self, in interactions and relationships with other people. Relational authenticity, right? This is like taking what's on the inside and starting to make it known on the outside. The next dimension is evolving authenticity. This is your capacity for growth and change while maintaining a sense of authentic self. Number 4 is manifested authenticity, and this is the alignment of your outer life and actions with your inner authentic self. So again, I think when we very basically think about authenticity, we're mostly talking about manifested authenticity, but you'll see as we get deeper into it how the other 3 dimensions are fueling and making possible manifested authenticity. And if you try to jump to that one and skip the rest of them, you're kind of like cooking with no ingredients, so to speak. You're not going to get very far. So we will dive a little bit deeper into each dimension, starting with the foundation, core authenticity. Okay. And again, this is the foundation of your authentic self, rooted in your values, beliefs, and vision. And let's start by looking at what are we noticing about our life if this dimension is underdeveloped? Okay. And what we would notice is that decision making is really difficult. We are frequently indecisive. We are easily swayed by other people's opinions, objections, maybe, and that we, in general, lack direction, right? Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to go. Help me, right? Looking for that external guidance, that external compass. And when this dimension is really strong, that's what it gives you, is a clear internal compass and vision for your life. So what it is that you want, your vision, and how to get there. Okay. So if you needed a reason to practice core authenticity, that's it. Getting clear on who you are, what you want, and how to get there. How to tune into your inner guidance. How to be your own authority figure. That's what we're talking about in core authenticity. And so when we get into how would we develop this is where we need to figure out how to identify and articulate your core values and what you desire. And there are lots of ways that you could do that. A couple of ideas might be journaling, meditation, guided visualizations. If you are historically like a more heady intellectual type person, you might also like a values exercise. I have one on my website. You can go to owningauthenticity.com/core values to find that free values exercise where it takes 132 potential core values and helps you limit it down to 5 so that you know what is truly important to you, because those values inform your vision. right? Like, what's in your vision for your life? You living the things that are most important to you, right? So like if we lack direction, focus, purpose, meaning, really a great place to start is always a values exercise. What's most important to you? Because that is cultivating what's most important will give you a sense of purpose, will give you a sense of meaning, will give you a sense of direction, will help you fill in the picture of what even is your vision for your best life. And what does it look like when core authenticity is overemphasized and out of balance with the others? Okay, and I think these overemphasized ones will become especially clear once we have the full picture of all 4 dimensions. But when core authenticity is overemphasized, you have a difficulty forming and maintaining, especially maintaining close, meaningful relationships due to inflexibility, due to potentially judgmental attitudes about other people who have different values, who think about the world differently. They have different beliefs. They have a different vision for their life and the world. And when your core authenticity is overemphasized, meaning it's so strong, it's like too much of a good thing, at that point, you start alienating other people. Okay? And so when we think about bringing that back into balance, what does it look like to balance a overemphasized core authenticity? Is cultivating curiosity about others' perspectives, learning to respect others' sovereignty. They have a right to be who they are just like you do. You don't have to agree. You don't have to be the same. In fact, we're all here because we are unique. So if anything, the stronger you are in your core authenticity, it's almost like the easier it should be, but also sometimes even more challenging to give others a permission slip to be strong in their own core authenticity and to hold space for them without needing them to be like you or to be different in any way. Which also doesn't mean that you have to be like them, right? You can hold space for somebody who's different without navigating yourself any differently. You can still stay true to yourself, and that would be the goal, always the goal. And so that's core authenticity. And the next one that we're going to go into is relational authenticity. And so this is where you express your true self in interactions and relationships with others. So that balancing of the core authenticity, cultivating curiosity towards others, respecting their sovereignty, all of that, like now we're going into relational authenticity. And when that's underdeveloped, we frequently feel unseen, unheard, misunderstood, judged, or disrespected by other people. We feel marginalized, even in our close personal relationships, which is very lonely to feel that way. And so, I mean, like one of my most transformative experiences before my healing journey even started was laying in bed next to my fiance and feeling the most alone that I had ever felt. And that is because my relational authenticity was almost nothing. My ability to be my true self out loud. And you see how already they're stacking up, because being your authentic self out loud is impossible if you do not personally have a sense of who that authentic self even is. Makes sense. So that's another piece of like people try to skip straight there. They're like, I want to fix my relationship. I want to have a closer relationship with this person. It's like, great. Pour your focus and energy into yourself. And it's like, no. I don't want to focus on myself. I want to fix my relationship. I heard you the first time. Pour your focus onto yourself, because the more vibrant your core authenticity is, the easier it will be to permeate your relationships, to attract relationships with other people who see you, who hear you, who understand you, who vibe and celebrate with you about who you really are. But again, all of those things are off limits if your core authenticity is offline and non-existent. So when relational authenticity is super strong, what do we get for that? We get connected, meaningful, resilient relationships. Relationships where mutual respect of each other's individuality is the basis. Okay, I respect your individuality, you respect my individuality. I'm curious about your perspectives, your thoughts, your beliefs, your values, and you're curious about mine. Not because we're trying to convince or brainwash the other person to be just like us, but because we genuinely care about the unique person standing in front of us. Relational authenticity, it's a beautiful thing. And so how would we develop this? If we want to feel more seen, heard, and connected in our relationships, we would practice sharing our personal truth. We would get better at that. And I have so much advice about how to speak your truth. And I actually wrote a whole book about the art of truth telling. Okay, so if you're interested, my Etsy shop is linked in the description box. But it's like you start small, you start in a safe space, you get really good at expressing your truth to yourself, and then you take the next little step, which is find a safe space, which may not be the relationship you need to express it to. Maybe it's a different friend or a coach or a mentor or a family member that you trust and holds compassionate space for you. You find a safe space to express this truth and you practice telling it out loud, and you get comfortable telling it out loud in the safe space, and that's how you work towards expressing it in the relationship. So relational authenticity is about speaking your truth out loud, ideally in real time, but at least at some point, circling back around and expressing your truth. And so that's how you would develop it if it's underdeveloped. What if it's overdeveloped? What if it's overemphasized? And this is a question that, again, I don't know if I could do a whole episode on it. Maybe. I mean, I'm a talker, let's be honest. But I love the question, is it possible to overshare when you're being authentic? Because authentic self and telling your truth and all of that sounds like oversharing wouldn't be a thing. Like, you're just telling your truth. But overemphasized relational ability, you're so good at telling your truth and being yourself that you overshare in inappropriate contexts. Okay, and we're going to talk about that and like what that means, because that's not always the case that the context is inappropriate for your sharing. But when it is, then we're in the realm of oversharing. And it's basically having difficulty respecting others' personal space or privacy. Okay, and a couple of examples of this, like the first example is the context of like boss and employee. Okay, and like you're the boss, and maybe you've never had that experience. I got another example in a second that might relate better, but the boss is there to lead the employee, right? The boss is not there to seek emotional comfort and sounding board for emotional personal issues from their employee. That is inappropriate. That's not professional. Okay, and like we get into this like gray area where like I'm just being my real self and that's my authentic self and like I should be allowed to do it my way. And you're right. Okay, like I agree with that, and that's my own inner teenager talking. It's like, don't tell me what to do. My little inner rebel. And I'll give you that, is like you should absolutely develop your own definition of professionalism, and you should surround yourself with people who feel the context is appropriate for you to share whatever you feel like you need to share. Okay? Like that is absolutely what you should do. And often in a more classic sense of boss employee, it's not appropriate. So you telling like, yeah, I had a huge fight with my husband and I'm really pissed and it brought up all this shit about my father wound and like all these things, like that's not the right place. It's not the right time. It's not appropriate to put that burden on the employee. And an even clearer in my opinion, less debatable context would be parent-child. Okay, and a lot of us grew up in a situation where the child was the emotional support for the parent. And that, in my own personal opinion, is abusive. You don't have to hold that opinion. Okay, you don't have to think that that's true. But again, in that situation, the parent is there to care for the child. The parent is there to provide guidance and leadership and nurturing and stability and safety for the child. And dumping emotional things, oversharing onto the child is an inappropriate context. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get to express every ounce of your authenticity. That you shouldn't get to tell every single story you ever want to tell. You should, absolutely. But how you would balance this aspect, if it's overemphasized, if you're oversharing in inappropriate contexts, the balancing is to develop discernment by practicing mindful sharing. Before expressing, pause to consider the context, the container of the relationship that you're sharing into, the relationship and the potential impact of your words. Okay, like just be aware. And if you think it's a good idea because this is the right relationship to share it into, like that's the point of core authenticity and being your own inner authority. But it's not always appropriate. Okay, and I feel like, again, this is such a gray area when it comes to authenticity because you absolutely have the right to be who you are. And your version of parenting may look like, actually, my kid is my therapist, and I think that's the right way to go, and I'm not going to argue with you about that. You're right. You know, you and your kid have something going on, and that's fine. But I am speaking my truth in a container, this little box on YouTube, on Spotify. I'm speaking my truth about, you know, when it comes to relational authenticity, there's the right place to share, there's the right time to share, and that is a masterful way to practice relational authenticity. So next, though, let's dive into evolving authenticity. Remember, this is your capacity for growth and change while maintaining a sense of authentic self. Okay, this is like your ability to move forward, your ability to become a different person, which again is like a little bit of a gray area when it comes to authentic self, because when we hear authenticity, it sounds so final. It sounds so black and white, authentic, not authentic. And evolving authenticity is the dimension that gives room for your current authentic self is just what's real today. And a year from now, your authentic self could look very different, and both versions are authentic. Okay, and if that blows your mind, I apologize. But basically what this space is about is like when evolving authenticity is underdeveloped, we resist new ideas. We fear change. We hold on to outdated beliefs about self. Okay? And like every single person, like I heard the other day in a session, I shouldn't laugh because it's common to feel like, well, but it's so hard because I have so much conditioning. And no offense to the person, but they said it like they are the only person on the planet where that's true. And it's just not. It's like the most bold thread of the common humanity story is that from 0 to 8 years old, we were all wet cement. We were all totally unconscious with zero discernment. Every single one of us absorbed the opinions of our primary caregivers. That's the job of a child, is to get conditioned. That's step number 1 of becoming a person. Step number 2 is to start sorting through what you were given so you can keep what works for you and get rid of the rest. And that's if your evolving authenticity is well developed, is that you have a sense. And again, we're going back to core authenticity of like knowing who you are, being able to feel your own inner authority, being able to say, this belief is me. And this belief that my dad believed or my mom believed or my teacher believed back when I was 5, that's what I used to think. But I don't like how that feels. I don't like how it makes me think about myself. It is awful. So I am done believing that, and I've got this new belief that is what I believe now. Evolving authenticity. The you who believed the old belief, that's authentic. You did at the time, and that's real, and that's authentic. You don't believe it anymore. You've evolved. You changed. That's real. That's authentic. Again, this what is a bit of a mind pretzel, because this goes against a lot of times how authenticity is presented. And when evolving authenticity is strong, when we have that strength, we're able to embrace beneficial and desired growth and change, which is never easy. Okay, growth and change exist outside the comfort zone. And walking up to the edge of your comfort zone is an anxiety-inducing experience. This is common humanity that I'm describing, okay? And stepping outside of your comfort zone will cause your amygdala, will cause your fear brain to send an alarm through your body. So it will give you a rush of adrenaline, a rush of fear response, so that you can hop into fight, flight, freeze, fawn, flop, any other fear response, like numb it back out, jump back out of the experience, go back under the covers, whatever your fear response looks like. But that is a disservice to your future self and to who you were born to be, because sometimes inside the comfort zone is an old, outdated version of you, is the version that you were taught that you are, is the conditioned version, is the stories and the mind loops of the people who raised you, not who you could be, with a little bit more discernment, a little bit more solid spine in your core authenticity to decide for yourself what your values, beliefs, and vision are. And as you do, as you grow core authenticity, this evolving authenticity gets really stirred up. And how would you develop this dimension? If you're like, actually, you're right, I am really scared of change. I do still have the mindset that matches my dad, like whatever the case is, like if you're recognizing you want to develop this dimension, you would deliberately expose yourself to a new perspective on purpose, or put yourself outside your comfort zone and have a new experience with new people that challenges your worldview. And here's the good news is that you're listening to this podcast. All right. So right now, right this very minute, you are developing your evolving authenticity because you are listening to my perspective. Okay. And some of it lands and you're like, oh, that's nice. I'm going to upgrade to that version. And some of it you're like, ew, no. And what I want to say is like, that's great news. If you are discerning and you're liking some of it and you're not liking some of it, that is a good sign that your core authenticity is online and strong, that you can discern and you can decide which parts work for you and which parts don't. Remember, a sign of underdeveloped core authenticity is that you are swayed by other people's opinions. So if you're taking in every single thing I'm saying and you're like, this is great, I want this version, I want to be this guy, I want to be like this, every single bit of it, most likely the core authenticity, we could go back to the beginning and like invest a little bit more in core authenticity. Not that there's a right or wrong way. I mean, we may be just very similar people. We may vibe, our souls may be cut from the same cloth. And so our core authenticity has a similar frequency. That could very well be, and if so, I'd really love to hear from you in the comments. Hey friend, welcome. And if it's overemphasized, if evolving authenticity is overemphasized, this is one that I have like actually really struggled with. Like I more fall on this end of the spectrum when it comes to this dimension. I love change. I friggin' love it. I love learning new things. I love growing. I love changing to this and having this new experience. And like, I love it so much. Okay. And maybe you relate to that. And when evolving authenticity is overemphasized, you love evolving a little bit too much. Okay. It might look like lack of consistency in behavior or values, and a difficulty maintaining a stable sense of self. So you can see where when evolving authenticity is overemphasized, again, we kind of need to go back to reinvest or invest a little bit more in core authenticity. Because we can grow and change, no problem at all. But when that's happening so fast that there's like no common thread, where we just like burn down our current self and be a new self tomorrow, like that's when it gets a little bit disorienting, because the 3D doesn't really move at that speed, at that pace, so it can present some challenges. And how would we bring an overemphasized evolving authenticity back into balance is to regularly reflect on how new experiences align with or expand your authentic self. So we're not getting rid of who we used to be. We're evolving it bit by bit. We're making this part a little bigger. We're reshaping this part. We're working on the same core authenticity the whole time. We're not getting rid of the old version and there's a brand new version that we're just starting out with. And so, like cultivating a strong sense of core self while remaining open to growth. So that's kind of that sweet spot of embracing evolving authenticity, but keeping it consistent with who you are and who you have been and who you are becoming in the future. And so all of this leads us to the fourth dimension of authenticity. And remember, this is manifested authenticity. This is where the authenticity conversation almost always is in this dimension of the alignment of your outer life and actions with your inner authentic self. And now that you know about core authenticity, relational, and evolving, how the hell are you going to manifest authenticity if you don't have those other ones? And so this is the trap that I fell into when I first had this intention of I'm going to make my life match my authentic self. Is you start running into all of these roadblocks. I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to do that because I'm cooking with no ingredients, right? So when manifested authenticity though is underdeveloped, what that looks like and what it feels like on the surface is that you're living a life that feels disconnected from your true self. You're making choices based solely on shoulds. I should do this. I should do that. I should parent my kids this way. I should have this job. I should go see this person. I should call this friend. Should. That's no compass to live by. Okay, that's your conditioning talking. Shoulds are born out of conditioning because when you actually want to do the thing, you wake up in the morning bright-eyed and bushy-tailed because I get to do that thing. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I have energy to go and do the thing that I'm on fire and alive to get to do that. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And that is the sweet spot of manifested authenticity. The strength of it is daily satisfaction and fulfillment, feeling full from living in alignment with your authentic self. Gorgeous. Okay. Bringing your life force energy to the forefront and cultivating it, stoking that fire by aligning your life, your daily actions. When you wake up in the morning and you love your job because you love what you get to do, you love the people you work with, you love the outcomes you're building towards, you love the vision, you love the values, you love the beliefs of the organization you're working with, whether it's yours or somebody else's, you love it so much. You wake up in the morning feeling that, you go to work and it just expands because I love this. I love getting to do this. I'm investing this much energy and I get back this much energy. Manifested authenticity is where it's at. But it does not happen by accident and it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, it's kind of the byproduct of having well-developed core, relational, and evolving authenticity. But the good news is like, even if you don't have core authenticity, like even if you haven't done any work on this journey at all, or like remember back to when that was the case for you, you can still feel like when your life feels disconnected from your true self. Like you don't even have to be an expert on who that true self is to know this ain't it. Okay, I hate this, right? I'm resentful, I'm lethargic, I am completely uninspired. I require a cow prod to get myself to move towards this thing that I absolutely have no interest in doing. That's a great sign that your life is disconnected from your true self. And again, when we recognize that, there can be this like mental, like wanting to jump into like, okay, I'm going to make my life reflect my true self. And then you're like all inspired and ready and excited. And it's like, wait, but I don't know who that is. Wait, who am I? What am I about? I know this isn't it, but what is it? And so we're back to core authenticity. So really, like when it comes to working with people and the workshops I do and the coaching I do and these podcasts, it's like we are mostly working in the dimension of core authenticity. We are pouring time and attention into who are you? Because the more solid you are in knowing who you are, the easier every single one of these dimensions becomes. So if you are looking to develop manifested authenticity, like you feel like you do have a pretty good sense of who you are. Your relationships are pretty good. Most of them are great, actually. And you're right. I have grown a lot in the last year, and I like who I'm becoming better and better with every little evolution phase that I go through. But my life, like it just, my job's still not that great. Like I still spend quite a few hours a week doing things that like don't really light me up. So like that might be a sign that you want to develop manifested authenticity. And at that point, we can only do one little bit more, like it's not going to be like a burn down your whole life and like just take this version of you and throw it in the dumpster and like start fresh. It's like, let's pick one area of your life, preferably somewhere you spend a lot of time and energy. Okay, because transforming that piece will make a huge impact. Making a 1% change to something that you spend 40 hours a week doing, that'll make a huge impact. If we pick something that you spend 1 hour a month doing and we evolve at 1%, you're not getting much bang for your buck on that evolution, on that manifested authenticity, because that thing hardly ever comes out of the box, right? So let's identify one area of your life, whether that's in your career, your lifestyle, your hobbies, your family, whatever piece it is that feels like it's not quite matching up with who I really am. And let's focus on a small change to better align with your authentic self. And remember, in core authenticity, we're talking about your values, your beliefs, and your vision. So most likely, increasing your manifested authenticity will also include increasing your core authenticity, getting even clearer on vision, values, and beliefs. And what's the danger? What's the overemphasis of having an overemphasized manifested authenticity? This is so funny. It's like once you get really good at being out of the box, it's really hard to go back into the box, okay? And this is difficulty adapting to necessary social or professional situations. Like at this point, I say I am virtually unemployable. I couldn't imagine having a job. Like flat out can't imagine it. And if I got into a situation where I had to have a job, oh my God, like I can't imagine it. I imagine it would be really difficult because I work according to my energy. I have a high level of manifested authenticity. I do what I feel like doing when I feel like doing it. Okay. And at a job, it doesn't work like that, right? It's a square hole and I'm a round peg and all of a sudden, like, this is really uncomfortable. And so there's a potential for conflict in environments that require some degree of conformity. The other example that comes to mind is I was on a board where there were like 12 members of this board, and we sat in board meetings once a month for like 3 hours. And oh God, like so much of it did not line up with my values, my beliefs, and my vision. Okay. And being in that board meeting was like sitting for 3 hours listening to nails on a chalkboard. And they talk about potential for conflict. They actually brought up issue with me and were like no shit, like, you need to conform better. You need to do it the way we asked you to do it. And I said, well, I'm not going to do it that way. Okay. Like, very respectfully, like, thank you, but no thank you. That's not going to happen. I'm going to keep doing it the way I've been doing it. And they said, that's not okay. Like, so we'll see you conforming better at the next meeting. And I said, consider this my resignation. I choose not to participate. You know, so conformity gets really, really difficult. Like, going against, which is to say what? Going against your values, beliefs, and vision gets really difficult when you get really good at it. Like, that makes a lot of sense. So balancing manifested authenticity, if you're really good at it, if it's overemphasized, basically means like find creative ways to express your authentic self within the constraints of your environment. Okay. And I would say an even better piece of advice is to seek environments that allow for greater authentic expression. Stop trying to fit the square peg into the round hole, or whichever way it is. Like, stop doing that. You know, like, do you need to be there? What's the value of being there? And here's like, so that situation, it made a lot of sense. Like with the board, it made a lot of sense to resign. Like, I have no reason that I need to be here. You know, the value of me being here, like, you could just get another person to come sit in this seat, someone who will conform the way you want. Like, great, easy peasy. My family, on the other hand, and this won't be true for everybody, sometimes resigning from your family is very much the way to go. But with my family, I don't want to resign. I don't. It's not a big enough conflict situation for me to decide that I'm just not going to be there. And so find a way to find a creative way to express your authentic self within the constraints of your environment. And what that looks like for me is that I go and I spend about 60 to 90 minutes a week having lunch at my grandma's house. Usually there are multiple members of my immediate family there, my parents, my siblings. And I know going into that experience for that hour that I'm going to conform. I'm going to play cards. I'm going to eat the food that they want to eat. And I go once per week for 1 hour. And so that's what I do. I decide that, like, I'm willing to do that because I want to be part of this experience. It's a trade-off. I understand. As far as manifested authenticity goes, this is not what I would have most of my life look like. And that's not at all what most, like 99.999% of the rest of my life doesn't look like. That 1 hour looks very different from that. But it's a sacrifice. It's a cost that I'm willing to pay because it's valuable for me to be with my family. And we could talk all about why that is, like the value I get out of it, but like I get value out of it. So I choose to dial down my manifested authenticity and dial up the conformity because it's worth it. And when it's not worth it, by golly, you just resign. You can do that. You're your own authority figure. So as we think about these 4 dimensions of authenticity, the core, relational, evolving, and manifested, which of those 4 is the most developed for you? So that's question number 1. Which of them is the least developed for you? What insights did you have about how the core authenticity kind of forms the foundation for all of the other ones? How that core authenticity, like knowing your values, your beliefs, and your vision, how that trickles out into all of these other dimensions of authenticity. right? It starts inside of us. For our relationships to be authentic, for us to even know which direction to evolve, for us to know how to make our life look like our true self, it all starts inside of us, right? Manifested authenticity may be the goal. Core authenticity is how you get there. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode, whether you want to reply to my email, if you're on my mailing list, if you want to leave a comment, if you want to comment in the circle community, if you're a member of that. And if you're not, I also want to invite you to join the Authentic Self Uprising to get instant access to a 5-step process, a 5-day, 5-hour journey of how to bring more of your authentic self to the surface, and how to meet that part of you, how to embrace that part of you, how to harvest the gems, the gold from the part that is newly online, and then how to mobilize that, how to implement it to get more manifested authenticity going on in your world. So if that sounds like something that you would like, a guided experience for free, you can sign up at owningauthenticity.com/uprising. That will allow you to join the circle community where the replays are housed, and to leave comments and join the community and have chats and meet friends who are doing this work as well. Who doesn't want that? If you don't, then don't worry about it. But if you do, I'll see you over there, okay? And until next time, I do hope that you are taking such good care of your beautiful self, manifesting all the authenticity that you desire and deserve, and I will see you soon. Okay.